And step one is to attend your monthly local beekeeping meetings and find someone that you want to emulate, someone that you want to be like. Maybe you
Hmm.
don't want to be a commercial beekeeper. You want to be an expert top bar high. Find someone that is what you want to someday become and
Okay.
success. I have to say that Randy Oliver did make a really excellent statement one time. The successful beekeepers in the area are the ones that are selling bees, not buying them.
From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is Pollination, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and people like you who are making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Malathopoulos, Associate Professor of Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture. I'm so excited. This week we got a brand new segment we're starting up on commercial beekeeping. And to do this segment, I really am not a commercial beekeeper. I'm an egghead. I work at the university. I know enough to know that I don't know that much about commercial beekeeping. So I have a co-host who I'm going to be introducing today. You probably, if you've been a long-time listener of the show, know him. Harry Vanderpool from Vanderpool Farms in the hills above Salem. Harry's been a mentor for me in, as you'll know from past episodes, in learning how to talk to commercial pesticide applicators. But in this episode, we're going to hear all about Harry, his how he was mentored into beekeeping, what he thinks has built the beekeeping community in Oregon to be so robust, and what it takes to be able to sustain yourself over many years of beekeeping. So this week on Pollination, we're kicking off this new monthly segment on commercial beekeeping with Harry Vanderpool. Well, Harry
Amazing.
Vanderpool, welcome back to Pollination.
Always glad to be with you, Adoni. Thank you.
And this is a special episode. We've been talking about this for a few months of having a segment where we're going to be co-hosts, where I want to have your perspective on commercial beekeeping. I think many people have some idea of commercial beekeeping. Maybe you watched a documentary where there's a commercial beekeeper in the documentary, but most people have not run into a commercial beekeeper. And so this segment is going to be dedicated to this. Anyways, you're on this show for that purpose. We want to kind of bring on some commercial beekeepers. And so, with that in mind, I thought we'd have an episode just to start with to learn about you so that our listeners know who our co-host is.
Sounds good to me.
I guess one thing that I wanted to start with is mentorship. You've talked to me in the past before about the importance of mentorship for you in developing your beekeeping career. Why don't you walk me through what your mentorship looked like?
Okay, we will have to start out with a lack of mentorship first, just to contrast the good from the ugly. So I got a call over 30 years ago, probably 32 years ago, from an old retired neighbor that has since passed away in the dead of the winter in January. And he says, Harry, can you come over and help me lift some boxes? And I said, sure, I'll be right there. And I went over, well, the boxes were beehives, which of course I immediately
Really?
refused. Yeah, that's right.
That's your initiation?
That was my so I go over there and finally he settled me down. He says they're not going to hurt you, and we moved the beehives, 4 beehives. And just to make the story short, from then on he couldn't keep me away from his beehives, and I was in there and he was kind of showing me things. And one day he called me and he says, I will sell you every single spec of beekeeping equipment I have, books, hive tools, smokers, they're $100.
Wow, what a deal.
So I got started with 4 beehives. Every book, I mean, when we got done, he did not have anything on the property that
For
related to bees.
$100?
For $100.
Unbelievable deal.
And so, but then like we see a lot of new beekeepers, it was just a couple years of disaster. They all died in the
Uh,
winter. Varroa had just come to town, basically.
mhm.
And so then I went to the state fair and ran into Richard Ferrier from the Willamette Valley Beekeepers Association.
Uh-huh.
He's still the current president of the Willamette. And that really made all of the difference to begin with.
Uh-huh.
And I went along, and my hive success and my hive numbers grew. And then he actually was a commercial beekeeper and a small commercial beekeeper, a sideliner,
Yeah.
and he needed extra bees. So he got me hooked on commercial beekeeping. At first, it began in pumpkins. Do you have? Yeah, I got 24 hives. He goes, we can rent them. And then that was like a first hit of heroin. From then on, I got to be doing this. And so mentorship, this is just the most wonderful thing that ever happened, is Kenny Williams called me, and I was doing the newsletter for the Willamette Valley Beekeepers. He wanted to put in an ad for some honey extraction equipment. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to buy all of it. So I went out and met Kenny and immediately realized he's one of the smarter people, I really, different people click together. I really enjoyed talking with him and the way he thought and analyzed things carefully. And so from then on, every once in a while, I would call Kenny and his wife Heike at the time, and I'd say, you know what, I want to work for free, and that's what I did. I shadowed them heavily. And the first thing it was just stunning reality, was that I was learning extremely valuable things that you will not hear in a bee meeting. You will not read in any books. Successful queen introduction. All the books have it wrong. All wrong. And that isn't, an opinion. It's when you're buying boxes of 100 queens and you have 98% acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you buy a box and you have 92%, but you realize the ones you lost was your fault, not, I didn't find the virgin queen. Whatever it was that caused that introduction to fail was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Queen introduction number one, and a bunch of things like that. And I've told Kenny and Heike every time I see them that a great deal of my success is directly linked to the training they gave me. Because I'm a moderator on BeeSource, and we just watch these people struggling and struggling and struggling. They need a good, solid mentor.
Let me just retract two things. So your first introduction to mentorship was through the Bee Club, that the Bee Club sort of put you in touch with people.
I didn't know. It was more just attending the meetings and hearing from experienced beekeepers. Yeah,
so
Kenny was. Yeah.
But the second part that I heard, so the Bee Club sort of introduced you, got you from those books and that 4 colonies and the kind of like trying to be successful. But through that, you met a commercial beekeeper who, clearly had gone through their trials and worked out the kinks of things. And it was working with them alongside them that you truly began to learn.
Exactly. And, along with that, Kenny was a retired teacher, and he was so perfect. So he almost never answered a question. So I called him, let's say, you called him up and you said, hey, Kenny, should I poke a hole in the candy plug on this when I introduce? His answer would be, Harry, why would you want to do that? Well, to get the queen out earlier. Do you want the queen out earlier? Do you want to rush the queen out? Well, I think so. I want to get laying. And then, helped you think through. And really, when the thing was done, the answer was burned in your soul.
So rather than answer the questions, kind of lead you to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so another wonderful, wonderful example of this is I went to help him shake packages one time.
Yeah.
What are you doing today? I'm shaking packages. I want to come and help for free. And so I showed up, and Kenny's 5 pallets down the row from me. And okay, I got to find a queen. I pull the lid off. I pull the feeder and the first frame out. Boom! I see the queen
Yeah.
on the frame in the hive. And I look down at him. I go, Kenny, have you ever noticed that when you don't look for a queen on the frame in your hand, when you see them, there's just something about that angle. I mean, they just jump off the frame. They're so obvious.
Uh-huh.
He blinks his eyes a couple of times at me and puts his tools down and comes down. He goes, Harry, let me show you how to find queens. And now, what I'm about to tell you, if you don't believe it, I'll give you all the eyewitnesses.
Okay.
After that, because I went crazy with this technique. Okay, it was just
Uh-huh.
his technique. I went crazy. And I went to George Hansen's field day, the Portland Metro Beekeepers.
Metro. Yeah.
Yeah.
Portland Metro. Yeah.
And I put on an exposition for several years where, the students rotate the pallets and hear different topics.
Yeah.
When they came to my pallet, I said, we're going to find the queen in these hives in under 15 seconds.
Gee. Okay. Well, let's hear everybody on the other end of this podcast is waiting with bated breath.
And here's what Kenny told me that day. We were shaking packages. Let me show you how to find queens. The first thing you do is separate the top box from the bottom box, set that on another hive. That way, now we have the queen isolated to 50% where she can run away from us.
Okay.
Turn the box with the sun shining over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Now you pull the first frame. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. It's really hard. It takes a while to get disciplined to do this. Pull the first frame. Don't look at it. Look in the hive.
Okay.
Look at the first. Now, because if it's on the frame, or if she's on the inside on the frame in the hive,
Yeah.
she'll run from the light. And you're sitting here looking at the frame. So pull the frame out. Don't look at it.
Okay.
Look carefully at the frame. Now look at the one in your hand. Nope, she's not there. Put her down. Pull the next frame. Don't look at it. Look in the hive.
Yeah. Ah. The principle here is that so when you take your first frame out, you kind of like look down right away. The
In
queen
the
is,
hive.
yeah, she's not running away from the light. She's starting to run, I guess. And so when you then pull that frame, so you can maybe see her in motion on that frame inside the box. Is that the idea?
So that you quickly, and you don't spend a bunch of time, you quickly look at the frame in the box. Okay, she's not there. Now she's isolated. If she's on this frame, you can take all the time you need.
Yeah.
Not there. Set her down. Pull the next frame. Don't look at that frame. Look in the hive again.
Yeah.
And you do that, and just boom, boom, there she is. Here's some eyewitnesses for you. Jan Lohman and Jason Rowan.
Yeah.
So
Two
I
great
finally
beekeepers.
went to George Hansen's place one time, said, I'm not going to instruct. I'm just going to enjoy the day. And I'm walking through the middle, and all the people are learning. And all of a sudden, Jan hollers over at me. Hey, Harry, come here. I said, oh, sure. I know. I didn't know what she wanted. Walk up, and she goes, Harry's going to show us how to find a queen in under 15 seconds. I'm like, oh, God. Okay. So then I gave him my little spiel, and she has her stopwatch ready to go. I reach down, I pull the feeder and the frame out. There she is, 2 seconds. We found the queen in 2 seconds.
Wow. My life has changed.
In all the years that I did this at George's, I'm going to say I did it for like 7 years, maybe 8.
Yeah.
It never took more than 6 seconds to find a queen.
Wow. Okay.
And hundreds of people are eyewitnesses because they all saw it. 6 seconds.
And so this all comes back to Kenny. So
Yeah.
working with a commercial beekeeper, learning these tricks that every commercial beekeeper who works with hundreds, if not thousands of colonies has to learn how to be efficient, has to learn the tricks and the hacks and the various ways around the bee colony. This is not in the books, but you really have to learn it by finding a mentor.
And time is money. We all know that. Now you think about this, let's say 25 years now later since I learned that, finding the queen, how much time have I saved? Hive after hive, day after day. Knowledge is power and time is money. And I mean, I told Kenny last time I talked to him, I ought to be paying him a retirement. I mean,
Well,
very valuable.
it raises the question of like, how does one find a mentor? Let's say that you are a hobby beekeeper and you have really enjoyed it. You'd like to see if you could make a portion of your income become a sideliner beekeeper. How do you find what kind of qualities should somebody look for in a mentor?
So that's a perfect question. And step one is to attend your monthly local beekeeping meetings and find someone that you want to emulate, someone that you want to be like. Maybe you
Hmm.
don't want to be a commercial beekeeper. You want to be an expert top bar high. Find someone that is what you want to someday become and
Okay.
success. I I have to say that Randy Oliver did make a really excellent statement one time. The successful beekeepers in the area are the ones that are selling bees, not buying them. So,
Oh, yeah, right.
and just a lot of respect and being respectful. A lot of times beekeepers say, yeah, you can shadow me for a few days. You're going to work for free, bring
Hmm.
a lunch.
Well,
Maybe the person that you buy your packages or nukes from.
yeah, yeah. You do have multiple points of contact with beekeepers, and I guess by watching them and listening to them talk and thinking, I guess the thing that you mentioned about Kenny that was notable is that his teaching style was compatible with the way that you like to learn.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, yes, for sure. And his wife at the time, Heike, she came from a different world than I grew up in. She came from Germany, where just to keep bees, you had to go through a journeyship, apprenticeship, yeah, which she did. And she's an excellent teacher as well. And I think she's taught a lot of people a lot of good. And so
This
I
does this does bring me to the second topic that I wanted to cover with you today, and that is just the whole sense of, there's a whole, you're a beekeeper. It's a pretty independent occupation. You can, pretty much, when you start off, you may have the idea that you just buy things and then you're on your own world. But I think one of the things that you've impressed upon me and through your career in the OSBA and with the Willamette Beekeeping Club, Willamette Valley Beekeeping Club, is service. So service and trying to support the beekeeping industry and providing service. I guess those are some of the people that you would look to mentor you, and in fact, that mentorship is a form of service. But what comes to mind when you think about service to the industry and sort of responsibilities beyond your own the colonies that you have under your management?
I love the way you worded the question because it's part of the answer I'm going to give you. When I first started going to the bee meetings, Willamette Valley Group, we had an excellent president, but then he decided to step down, and Richard Ferrier became president. I was brand new beekeeper, brand new, and I walked into a bee meeting one time early, just right off the bat, and there were 4 or 5 commercial beekeepers standing around talking. And as I walked up, my ear caught they were talking about someone that was running for office in probably the OSBA, but I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
And the other person's comment was, it's about time, whoever it was, it's about time he stepped up and gave back to the industry. And when I heard that, and I'm talking, I was brand new beekeeper, I thought, I'm going to remember that. And it wasn't 6 months of going to the Willamette Valley Beekeeper Association meeting that Richard became president, but he asked me, he says, would you be interested in being vice president? I thought, you know what, I'll just get this service back to the industry right out of the way right now. And it went from then, which was probably 1990 something early, right up until 2018 when John Jacob took over the president of the Oregon State Beekeepers. I right off the bat wanted to do give back all that I've gained from the organizations, which was a lot. And I see the opposite in people that don't get involved. And there's a lot to be gained from, I mean, you become a better speaker. Your
Hmm.
organizational skills improve immensely. Mine did. Um, your contacts and working with the media, working with the legislature. It's huge.
Well, I was going to say that I believe that one of the testimonies you gave is in the Oregon legislature is in a training video as exemplary on how to give testimony.
Well, which is there's a real funny background to that. I went. What they wanted to do was on our hive assessment, 50 cents a hive that we pay.
Yep.
They
So
wanted.
yeah, people to know this, when you register your colonies, there's a hive assessment, and it came that goes to rulemaking. That's an actual piece of legislation that has to
That's
pass.
right.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that 50 cents a hive was going to go to apiculture. Well, when it got going, then all of a sudden the legislators wanted to split off half of it for native bees. I'm all for native bees, but why would you have an industry assessment on beehives and send it off for something else? And I got up there and I was like, well, why don't we send some of it to oak savannas? How
Hmm.
about salmon restoration? And anyway, I got so testy on the stand, which I never do, and snarky that when the session was over, I left, and our past president Joe Marish and Marge Erie chewed me up one side and down the other. That is not the way you conduct yourself in a legislative hearing.
Hmm.
That hearing is the one that they put online now. How to testify at to the legislature is that hearing. So I did something right.
Well, and I guess that's when it does come to, advocacy for the industry, and, it is a matter of, I suppose people think, their memory of apiculture and beekeeping goes back to sort of the attention that got stirred up maybe a decade and a half ago. But for a long periods of time, apiculture in Oregon, people weren't sure, is it a crop? Is it livestock? Where does it fit in? Falls between the cracks, and so there hasn't been it has been neglected routinely, and so there's a way in which advocacy and service to the industry has been really key in making sure that you know key aspects, the real foundations of apiculture in Oregon are not just maintained but kind of built upon.
Absolutely. And you brought it up, the 2014, 2013, the hive kills up in Wilsonville and in, what was it, Sandy, wasn't it?
Oh,
Wilson,
there was the one in Wilsonville,
right,
but then uh there was two more in the Portland area.
right. I think it was
Hills,
like Gresham or Sandy or somewhere.
and then the following year there was two in Eugene
Right.
after the restriction of that chemical. But yeah, the legislature was really motivated on, and this was predates me. I'm sort of in some ways the product of this.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, but
I
that
just
that
brought this up in a meeting here a few days ago.
the legislature was really interested in figuring out, was motivated to look at the health of bees in the state in a way that it hadn't been for decades. So it kind of was an opportunity, and I guess the point being, without leadership in the industry, those kinds of, when the legislature comes and asks, what do you need? Without leadership, that can be very disorganized and unclear. And, because these kind of opportunities to advance legislation don't come frequently.
Well, leadership we had in the industry. Myself, I was down there every other day there for a while. Dr. Mike Rodia, him and I, it was like one day we commented that the Capitol's like our living room down there. Marge Erie, George Hansen. And you know, you bring up that bumblebee kill because what happened there is a fuse was lit for every kind of anti timber, anti agriculture, anti pesticide, anti fertilizer. All these people came out of the woodwork and saw that as an opportunity to pounce on all of the lovely multitudes of dissimilar agriculture sectors we have in Oregon, to ban everything, take tools away from farmers. And we all answered the call and we were down there and shut all of that down. And what's amazing about that, I think you and I were looking at a graph recently, because a lot of copycats jumped out of the woodwork too, raising alarms. A lot of these, but you and I looked at a graph recently in a meeting of the complaints, the bee complaints after that period of time have done just a steady decline. There was this big push back then too, which was not designed very well. Report. Your beehive dies, call the Department of Agriculture. I think it's pesticides. Well, people have learned, and no, let's call a mentor, let's call a fellow beekeeper first and see what, they have to say. I'm just so proud of everybody that was involved. I mean, all of the different agricultural groups that got together and we spoke in harmony and unity, that we worked together. And I mean, it was boots on the ground in the Capitol, and we pulled out of there way more unified after that event than we'd ever been before. And then out of the chaos and just ridiculous chaos that was going on down there, something excellent came out of that. And that was that we had the governor's task force on pollinator health. And out of that, they funded a pollinator specialist, Dr. Adoni Melathopoulos.
That's right.
And it's made all the difference. I mean, huge difference in Oregon, particularly when it comes to pesticides and pesticide applicators and beekeepers working together and crafting and drafting protocols, which is really one of the best things ever. Every one of those meetings where we draft protocols of working around pesticides with migratory bees, everybody leaves the room going, why didn't we do this years ago? It really is wonderful.
There is one of the podcasts I did early on, had Representative Reardon, who was, along with Representative Gorsuch, brought the bill forward, or part of that pollinator task force. It was really interesting hearing his account of it, like also sort of, a lot of different parts of the state came into motion over this issue, and trying to, think about, as a lawmaker, how does one come up with legislation? And I do recall, as my colleague Ramesh Sagili, who chaired the Pollinator Health Task Force, remembers that it had to be through consensus. And so you would have different groups advising the legislature with different perspectives, but they did have to work together on what they could agree to. And I think the education plan was a kind of key component of ensuring that applicators. I just did this morning. I was with the Oregon Mosquito Vector
I've talked
Control
with them before.
Association. Yeah, and so just going through them and going over the label provisions and product selection, because I think you've been my mentor in some ways in thinking about how to talk to applicators. And I think one of the things you taught me early on was, when I go into the room, to recognize that it's a high liability job to be a commercial pesticide applicator, that it involves a lot of technical equipment, a lot of training. And, I usually go, especially to that group, I, thank them. They are in some ways doing public health,
Absolutely.
including vectoring mosquitoes. And so making sure that my first step into the room isn't, you're an applicator and you're the problem, but rather you're an applicator and here are some solutions to achieving your job and having minimal impacts on bees. When you had put that to me early on, it really helped me understand what my role was as an educator in helping them achieve what I think we all want.
That's awesome. I spoke about this a lot the other day in a meeting with a group. that prior to all of this, our relationships were there. Commercial beekeepers, had growers for many years, but it was all kind of scattered and fragmented. That event, and then coming together with the governor's advisory group, and then getting you going, and all of us presenting at the pesticide applicators meetings and things. I think there was just a period of time where we all looked around and realized we got to pull together. Every sector of agriculture, bees, pesticide applicators, there was never a better time for us to look around and say, we need to be pulling together, because there's somebody out there. If we don't tell our story to each other, there's someone else out there that's going to tell it. And that story is not going to be the one we want to tell. And we really, really were able to tell our story together. I think it really shocked some of the legislators and the press, because I had a lot of dealings with the press. I think people just thought that every beekeeper wanted to ban every pesticide. We just want to ban every pesticide. We want to outlaw. I mean, it was really a surprise for them to learn, oh, wait a minute. Beekeepers work in and out of agricultural operations year after year after year, and they know that we're all working really hard and trying to make a living at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's very important, not for knee-jerk reactions. We need to understand what's going on. There's no easy money in agriculture, for darn sure. No. And we as beekeepers need to really appreciate those hardworking farmers and growers, and Christmas tree growers, and everybody that make it all happen in our we're all in the same business.
I mean, I think that does help when the motivation is, let's find a solution, clearly, because, it is tough on both sides. Commercial pollinating is a really tough business. And I know when you do train pesticide applicators, you do, let them know, if you want me to move my colonies, that comes at some expense. I've already been moving bees all night. And, so I don't have a lot of options, and I know you don't have a lot of options, and knowing that we both have kind of restricted options, what can we do? And I think that's a great, it builds trust. And I think then you have the grower who calls you in advance because they know your motivation is to their success, and they have your back as well. And I guess that brings me to how I wanted to end this episode. Is I did want to talk about beekeeping ethics. It's an issue that you and I have talked about in the past, in terms of, especially, I think about 80,000 colonies, a lot of them in the Willamette Valley, commercial beekeepers having to really share space, often work with the same growers. Talk to me a little bit about, how you think about the kind of the broader ethics of, being a commercial beekeeper, and how it relates to, the industry as a whole.
So Richard Ferrier is still the president of the Willamette Valley Beekeepers Association. And right off the bat, I'll tell you this, from day one, he got up and preached from the pulpit how we work as in Oregon, because it is different across. I see things on Bee Source, and the way people, it's not the way we do it here. Preach beekeeper ethics, and very simple little things. We didn't have Google Earth at the time, but now it's very easy. We want to find new little spots for honey yards or holding yards. It's very easy to first go onto Google Earth and look around and see, are there any other yards nearby? Mm-hmm. And how close? And if it's questionable, who is it? So we can call and talk to them. You walk into a store and you're looking for places to sell your honey. There's already honey sold there. Okay. Now, if there's two beekeepers, the original person's cut 50% on their sales. You're only going to get 50% of what you should. 3 or 4, I mean, it's ridiculous, mm-hmm. is really looking out for each other. And then when I started working with Kenny, shadowing him, I should say, he like preached as he worked. He's working on a beehive and he's talking about it over his shoulder to me. He really felt motivated to make sure his apprentice over here clearly understood that we are an agricultural community. We're a community of beekeepers, and we're gonna need each other from time to time. Hey, Queen, or hey, I don't have enough hives. Would you like to rent some of yours so you can help me fulfill my contract? It is a very, very, very valuable aspect of Northwest beekeeping. And if a person doesn't understand that, if they haven't taken the time to learn that, they'll learn the hard way. And
Mhm.
I hate to see that. And so I like to see it preached from the pulpit as much as we can. I did a presentation about easy money, which showed all the terrible disasters I've had in beekeeping, but it really circled around in many places too, the help that each one of us beekeepers do. By the way, we had a fire out here right across the street from me, like going down a canyon, and it was on the news on the radio, and I got
Oh
a
dear.
call from our current president of the OSBA. My phone rings. He goes, Harry, you got a fire going out. I go, yep. He goes, I've got a crew of men, 7
Oh, Tom.
forklifts. Tom,
Yeah.
sorry, Tom, I love you. No kidding, Nick. I picked my phone. He says, I got 7 trucks and 4 forklifts and a whole crew of guys. We can be on our way right now if you need it.
Huh. Wow.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
It's so valuable, and we should. And you know what? But I want to see more. And I've been working hard, and I know you have been too. You've been doing a great job. That needs to cross the lines to our other agricultural sectors, our growers and our horticulture and vineyards and all of us. We need to pull together in that same way. Just it's all attitude and
Hmm.
commitment.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking about this. I'm listening to this episode from the perspective of somebody who's not in commercial agriculture, who may really be interested in bees, maybe native bees, maybe gardening, and they're listening to this and they're like, well, I don't quite understand this perspective, and I guess it might be hard to understand how, you know, touch and go agriculture can be. Like it is a very risky, it's risky on not only you dealing with live organisms that can crash and can have great years, bumper crop years, but you're also dealing with market forces that are beyond Oregon, beyond the United States, that,
Yes,
honey prices and, being, the import of honey that's, maybe adulterated agriculture. I've recently been thinking about blueberries. There's this huge growth out of nowhere, seemingly, of a blueberry industry in Peru that's putting a lot of pressure on the growers in Oregon. And
right.
then, so now there are all these pinch points of where everybody is, having to deal with these much larger forces than your own business. And this kind of spirit of trying to sort of, we're all businesses, we're all competitive, we're all trying to, be the best, but at the same time, having a kind of sense of, well, but there is a kind of broader, we'll have your back if there's a fire, or if I have a bee yard here and I've had it for years and it's abandoned for 1 year, I won't just approach the landowner and move in on it. I'll call you, we'll talk about it. Oh yeah, I am actually shrinking my operation. That you're welcome to that bee yard. Like, you have a conversation rather than,
Right.
or the shelf. You go to the market and they say, well, this beekeeper, they can you give me a better price? You realize that you're kind of like, it's the race to the bottom if you engage in that. And I suppose this is kind of what you're getting at.
For me, I am not in competition with my fellow beekeeper, any of them. Anybody that is door knocking, and the grower would say, "Oh no, I already have a beekeeper." Who's that? Well, it's Harry Vanderpool. Oh, I'll do it for $1 less a hive. I mean, we just don't have that. When we
Mhm.
do, it's either someone that's new and just really hasn't got into our beekeeping community yet. They have some growth yet ahead of them, or same with the just cut price shopping. Oh no, it's I. You know what? I've worked in very competitive industries. I don't personally see that for me. I don't feel like I have people trying to undercut me. If they do, I have had growers say, well, someone knocked on my door, and the grower just told me, they just said, no, thanks, I have a beekeeper. So it's
Mhm.
that simple. I did have one person try to take a grower away from me one time, but it was brand new to commercial beekeeping, and I just don't think, a lot of industries outside of beekeeping are very competitive. I think new people might bring kind of that attitude in until they realize the value of being part of the community.
Well, I guess that sets us up real well because you and I are going to set up a series of interviews with commercial beekeepers. They're people who you largely know, and so that's a benefit. We know what the topics are going to be, but this will give us an opportunity, a kind of mentorship light, we'll call this,
That sounds
where people will get a sense of, what that conversation looks like between two beekeepers to learn the skills that they have that they've developed over time and sort of spread around this sense of a beekeeping community.
that sounds great. And what? One thing I have noticed, and I think it's maybe this way in life elsewhere, each commercial beekeeper brings his or her own strengths. And some people are real mechanical, some people are really good at construction, some are good at a little of everything. I love hearing other people's perspective. My wife Elizabeth, the thing she loves the most about going to the conference is when there's a presentation like Tom Sanquini did.
Mhm.
It takes you into their operation, shows you their honey room and all of that. I think it's going to be very exciting, Adoni, to see what people are really excited about in their operations.
All right. Well, I look forward to our next encounter. We've got two shows lined up here that we're going to be recording soon. So,
Great.
welcome to Pollination, Harry, as co-host of the commercial beekeeping segment of the
Great. I hope our Commodore 64s work better next time.
show. Indeed. Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you, Doni.
Thank you so much for listening. Show notes with links from each episode are available at the website pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's a form at the website where you can pop in and say hello and give me feedback. If you want to support the show, remember to leave a rating on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever podcast mothership you use. And finally, if you have the means and you want to help support my lab's effort to document bee biodiversity in Oregon, visit OregonBeeAtlas.org and follow down to the donate button where you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Jerry and Judith Paul Native Pollinator Endowment. Every little bit helps. See you next episode.